Alright everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes video with Fat Phil, and I have yet to create a Galactic Legend Leia farming guide. I've done this for all the other Galactic Legends, so you guys can go check those out. I've got them, I have a playlist here that this will be saved into, but what I do for each Galactic Legend is I break down the order that I would relic them in and how it makes sense for your account. So we're going to be doing that for Galactic Legend Leia. We're going to look at all the Rex, kind of explain the order that I would farm them in and why that's important. So like, subscribe, comment down below, let me know your thoughts. Let's give a massive shout out to all the channel members for their continued support. If you're ever interested, that link is down below. So to the Wampa Jedi Master Tier members, thank you guys so much. And there are a lot of on the council members that I have yet to be able to recognize because there's just so many of you. I very much appreciate all of you. I hope that I'm providing good content. So let's get into the video and the introduction. All right, we got our intro out of the way. Let's talk about the Galactic Legend Leia farming guide. So the first thing you need to remember is that Leia is your eventual goal. She's the goal, right? I think it sounds so silly, but I feel with Galactic Legends, sometimes players lose their focus a little bit. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to work on, Kylo, but I'm also going to build up Malicos and Darth Maul at the same time. And it's like, stop, just get Kylo. And then when you have the resources that you can, get Kylo, then maybe go look at those guys. But with Galactic Legends, your focus has to be on the GL. So obviously Leia is the eventual goal. Now, the first two characters that I would take to relic levels for the Leia farming guide are Commander Luke and 3PO and Chewie. I don't know that you necessarily need to go Relic 7 right away with them, but they're the first two characters that I would take to relics. I think they're the most important to your account of all of her Rex because they're still just such a solid team. With C-3PO, they form a very good 3v3 team. Add in Han and Chewie, and now you've got your 5v5. The CLS team just so friggin' good. Now, the next two characters that I would relic are Captain Drogon and Captain Rex, the two captains. They both have Rebel Fighter tags. Captain Rex, obviously, it has the Phoenix tag as well, so if you have your Phoenix team, Captain Rex makes a ton of sense. Captain Drogon, he's got the Rebel Fighter tag. There's a lot of ways to use him. I've seen players put in with, Commander Luke Skywalker. And let's just say for the sake of, argument, though, you were just going straight into Leia. You weren't doing any other farms. You had nothing else but GL Leia. All of these guys on a team, that would still be really tough for a lot of players to beat. So, those would be my first four relics. I think that makes the most sense, especially because I think most players, Leia is not the first thing they're doing. So they've probably built some foundations to other Rebel teams. And so this kind of helps you expand on that a little bit, right? Now, Scout Trooper is next with a big if statement. So, if the raid is still going on, which that's going to be ending soon, but more so, if you have Iden Versio, then I think you farm Scout Trooper. Otherwise, I think we just leave him go, right? Then he moves on to the end. I think if you have Iden or you have that Imperial Remnant team with Dark Trooper Moff Gideon, you need this guy here. Otherwise, I would kind of move on. The reason why these guys are still up here is because even if you don't have Han and Chewie and C-3PO, these four right there make a very formidable team. That's kind of why, the first five look the way that they do. They are, in my opinion, the five best characters out of the Leia farming. But there's a big if statement, I think, with Scout Trooper because that just, to me, is what makes the most sense. Now, if you're in the early game, there's another if statement here. If you're in the early game, I would recommend the Ewoks at this point. I think if you're in the early game, getting the Ewoks to not only get your C-3PO, because with these three Ewoks at relic levels, even before relic levels, they'll probably smash the C-3PO event, but this is a great time to farm these guys. You could build the two other Ewoks, and even if they're not super high geared, I guarantee you players will probably drop to this team in 3v3 Grand Arena. 5v5, I don't know as much, but it at least gives you a team to use. I feel like players underestimate and undervalue Ewoks. Yes, at the level that I play at, I'm not seeing Ewoks that often, but you got to remember, one thing I think as content creators, we need to make sure we do a better job on, and I've called myself out for this before. We lose a little bit of touch with the game. That's why Scout Trooper has an if statement here. Yes, he is probably the fifth best, requirement for Leia, but if you don't have Iden and you don't have, Dark Trooper Moff Gideon, he's useless to your account. He doesn't help. These things in the early game phenomenal. Like, this is a phenomenal team for 3v3, decent team for 5v5. You can get some really solid use out of them, and I think that would really help build your account as you're working towards Leia. Remember, when you're building a Galactic Legend, what you want to think about is not only, oh, like, Scout Trooper's flashy, but does he actually help your account? That the order you relic characters, more often than not, in my opinion, doesn't just be, oh, I want to do all the relic 3s first. It should be, what will help me make my account as good as possible? Like, I always do all the garbage Rex last in a Galactic Legend farm. I do all the garbage Rex last because I want to have as good a characters as I can in the middle of that farm. Like, I did Drogon and Captain Rex way before I did the Ewoks, and it paid off because they were getting holds of my Mon Mothma team. So just make sure we're following through with that, right? So yeah, if you're in the early game, these guys. So, Rebel Officer Leia, Organa, Captain Han, Lando, they're not great characters, but they are needed. They do perform some, they can do some good things in the early game. These are some other decent characters for Grand Arena. And honestly, like, for a lot of players, they'll be kind of a backbone team for you. And I know that everybody thinks of backbone teams and core teams in like the AP Gains sort of way, which he was kind of the one that I would really say kind of got behind that, where it's 8 specific teams and that's your backbone. I don't want to say I disagree that those teams aren't important, but your backbone, in my opinion, is the stuff that you're going to be using in Grand Arena, territory battles, territory wars, conquest, like the characters that you're using every single day. That's your backbone. And for some players, when you're going for Leia, these are probably backbone because they're your relics. Like, you've invested relics in them. They're going to be your backbone teams for a while. All right, I apologize for the cut in the video here. My daughter decided to interrupt. So then you've kind of got the last ones here, right? So this is your R2-D2, Lobot, and Admiral Akbar. The thing with R2-D2, I wanted to move him up earlier, but I feel that for a lot of players, R2, he could kind of take the position of Scout Trooper, but I left him down here because I feel that most players are not going to want to invest the Zetas in him until you get Leia. And that's kind of why I put him last, is that without his Zetas, he's not that great of a character. So if you have his Zetas, he can definitely move up to like Scout Trooper's position. Otherwise, just go for him at the end, you know? And maybe you already have him because you did Jedi Master Luke, but this is kind of where I would view R2-D2, is that I wouldn't invest in him unless you're going to go for the Zetas. And that's kind of why he's towards the end, is that even for some players, like, you're not going to really be able to fully utilize R2 until you get Leia. So you could put him at the end. As much as I love R2, I think most players realistically don't have a way to use him until they get Leia, right? And then Lobot and Admiral Akbar at the end here, it's just mediocre. They're not great characters. I have Akbar's Omicron. It doesn't really do much for me. I think I put it on the bench most of the time. You could put some of these guys, like make a team of GAC out of Akbar, Lobot, Rolo, Captain Han, and Lando. And I mean, it's not going to be great, but they've all got Rebel tags, you know, a little bit of synergy there could help you out. So that's not a like terrible GAC team to get out of this Leia farm, right? Then finally, you've got Coors Light, Leia, and then Scout Trooper would go here as well. Like, they're just the two that do not fit in, right? They don't help you with Rebels. They're not like the Ewoks that come together. They just kind of are Rex, and they sit here, in my opinion. Now, a lot of you can say, oh, I already have Leia because of Jabba. Okay, then you're done, right? Like, the one thing with the Leia farm is, depending on where you start it, some of these characters are going to be a lot closer to their level than others. Like, if you already have Jedi Knight Luke, all 3 of these guys are at least at Relic 3, and Lando would be Relic 5 if you did the Jedi Master Luke event. Hell, my R2-D2 was Relic 7 already because of the Jedi Master Luke event, you know? So your Relic levels could be different here depending on what stuff you've done before it, but this would be the order that I would Relic those characters. I feel like that's the smartest decision, because otherwise, you know, trying to go for Leia and Scout Trooper early because, like, they're flashy, like, that's just, leave them at the end. They're not going to help you unless you have the means to utilize them. Same thing with these guys. And so I think this is pretty solid. And if you're sitting here saying, well, Phil, how do I, you know, what team do I use with Leia? I mean, just right out the bat, you don't have anything else other than her requirements. I'd go Leia, Drogon, Rex, R2-D2, and then probably, honestly, I'm debating saying Rebel Officer Leia Organa. I feel like that right there kind of captures everything that you would need. The reason I don't say Captain Han is because, and Lando, I just don't think his kit is quite as good as Rollo's. But with Rollo, what I really like about her is she, Galactic Legends Leia's kit calls out scoundrels. So that's why you don't use Lando and Captain Han. I forgot to mention that. You can't use these two because they have that scoundrel tag, so they don't have the synergy. So that leaves you with Rollo, Lobot, and Akbar. And I think Rollo has the best of those kit to take advantage of it, because they have, like, non-scoundrel rebel attackers gain 25% mastery and health and protection. And Rollo, if you go back to her kit, right, she has that attacker tag, whereas Akbar and Lobot have support tags. So I think taking advantage of that part of Leia's kit is super helpful for Rollo. She does have a really good AoE ability, and she can cause some problems. So that would be the team that I would use if all you did was farm Leia. And then obviously as you progress in the game, you'll start to put in some other characters in there. If you're using Captain Rex with the Phoenix, and Rollo can go with Sana, you can build out some other teams here. Drogon, R2 are kind of the staple, and like Mon Mothma is solid. Kyle Katarn, obviously Kanan and Old Ben can be really good there depending on what you're using. So just kind of depends on what your roster looks like and what you have. So that's the end of the video, guys. Let me know your thoughts down below. And again, Leia, in my opinion, is probably, I think I know Arnold, at the time of recording, he just did like a ranking all the GLs. I don't know if I should like respond to it, because I don't want to bash Arnold. Like, I don't ever want to do that. I think he's fantastic for this community. He does so much good, but my personal opinion, I would put Leia at the number 2 GL, all things considered. You get some really good Rex out of her. She's great in PvE. I'm discounting the raid because that's going to be sunsetting at some point, and then you can't really consider that for her. She's great in PvP. She's got some really good uses. I just think that there's some... How do I say this? I feel like, there's some other Galactic Legends that are a little bit closer to her than we think now that her Datacron has kind of gone away. And I feel that, unfortunately, her event on Endor is just garbage. So, that's the end of the video, guys. Let me know your thoughts. Again, like, subscribe, comment. I love you all. May the Force be with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, my friends.